are listening to Made in China.
Thanks for listening. I'm Preston Kuo, and I learned of our guest's work the first time I walked down Nanluo Guxiang, which is a popular tourist street in Beijing, maybe 12 years ago. I saw these images in a storefront, and I just felt overwhelmed with cool. These are such a great mixture, maybe the perfect mixture, of modern design with old and new China all bundled. So when I had the chance to sit down with the owner, which I never thought would happen, it was almost like meeting a celebrity, because I had been a fan and moved by his work so long ago. I was excited to hear what he did, but more excited to find out how he did it. How did he fail? How did he succeed? What could I learn, and what could I share? Lucky for me, he was very open to sharing.
You know, I opened a little shop, 13 square meters. I spent $5,000. 3 years later, I was turning over $1 million a year, and I became famous in China. Someone with no plan, following a passion, completely impulsively, had no idea what he was doing in terms of business, but in terms of from his heart and his passion and his creative edge, he just found something that he was good at by accident, which is pretty much the same thing as coming to China in 1993. I came here by accident and then fell on my feet.
I can't wait to hear what you're going to say next. This podcast is really about learning. What's the biggest loss or failure that you've had that you've learned from here in China?
Entrepreneurs love this word, and it's a word I hate because it's what led me to failure. It's the word scale. And I think when you become an entrepreneur and then your business starts to get feet, and then you hang in entrepreneur circles, everyone screams scale at you. If you're not growing, you're dying, right? As my business started to get legs, I went down the traditional route, which is I got to scale. I got to scale up. People know my brand. I've got to expand, IPO, whatever it is. I was learning all these new acronyms, KPIs, SOPs, IPOs. I had absolutely zero passion about them, but I felt like I had to go down that route. And it almost came out with the end of my business. Because about 3 years in, I suddenly had money. There was cash flow, and it was positive cash flow. And I spoke to people about, scaling the business, and everyone's like, shop in every city, shop in London, potentially anywhere in the world. And so I started to scale up, and I opened shop in Shanghai, and I started doing business in Hong Kong, Singapore, and I suddenly became probably the most miserable entrepreneur in Beijing. I didn't come into the business from a business angle. I came in from a very pure angle. I had a creative thought, which was, I saw someone wearing a t-shirt that said, I climbed the Great Wall in 2005. And I thought, I bought that in 1993 for $1 on the Great Wall. And all those years later, they're still selling that t-shirt. So I had this idea, which was to take a woman in a bikini and just plaster her on the top of that design. For me, aesthetically, it was the most beautiful idea I'd ever had. Now, that idea changed a whole neighborhood in Beijing. It changed my life. But it was my most unsuccessful design to date. My whole business was founded on an unsuccessful idea. But of course, I pivoted and I changed and I came up with successful designs eventually. But that was it for me. It was a very pure dream. I wanted to create. And I didn't want to scale. And I almost lost the business. I ended up cash flow negative. I ended up with staff I hated. I ended up doing business with people I didn't like. And I lost myself entirely. And so I learned to hate that word scale. And hate's a strong word, but I truly mean it when I talk about the word scale. I am growing. I grow every year creatively. And that makes me incredibly happy. What draws happiness for me in this business is when I see new designs. When I see my artwork around Beijing, whether it's on a graffiti wall or whether it's in a restaurant or whether recently it was in the Fine Arts Museum in Taiwan. That's what gets me excited, is to create things and to see people enjoying them and get a little bit of recognition from that. Money doesn't necessarily bring me any form of happiness, and neither does scale. I'm not out to build the biggest business. I'm out to build the best. So it took me about 2 years to realize that. And that's when I nearly lost the business. 2 years of thinking I should scale. And then I scaled it back to just Beijing. And I realized that that's where my sandbox is in business. It's Beijing. That's my playground. And that's where I play better than anybody else. And it's also where I'm very happy. So now I'm a very content person. I have enough money, not a shed load of money, but I'm pursuing my passion. I'm dictating my own road and not somebody else's. And so I couldn't be happier. Success has come in two areas. Number one is creatively, and number two is in terms of marketing. And I would say that the one thing I really learned was the importance of story in marketing. And it's something I know that you like yourself. There was a person behind it. There was a family behind it. There was passion. It was tangible. It was small. It was cute. It was fun. It had a start, a middle, and an end. It had that full arc that a story needs. People love the story. And it wasn't just the story of the brand and the designs itself. It was my story. And I learned from a very funny story, which is, one day, randomly, I'd never been on television in my life, and now I host television shows. It was China's most famous TV host, a woman who's got a show called Lu Youyue, came to my store. And my IEs in the store called me up and said, you have to come to the store now. We got a megastar in the store. So I ran over. And there she was. I'd never seen her because I don't watch television. And I just understood that I needed to sell her my brand at that point because I wanted her in a T-shirt. I didn't think I was ever going to be on her TV show. So I remember I told her about the designs in the shop, and her eyes lit up. And then I got a stool and I put it at the back of the shop. And I told her to stand on the stool and look out through the window in the back of the store. And I said, you see that little courtyard in the back of the shop? I said, you see those kids playing in there? I said, those are my kids. And this is my store, and this is my life. And this is what I love to do. And she just loved it. And she rang me up a week later. She goes, I want you to come on my show. 40 million people. Me on a sofa with a studio audience of 1,000 people. But it completely changed my life.
Right.
And it was because I sold her the story. And she loved it. And it was my story, and it was what I was passionate about. And when I went on the TV show, I did something incredibly immature, which was I made a T-shirt that was just like an illegal advert you get in China. You get these legal adverts stuck on trees, stuck on bridges, right?
Right.
And it was a legal advert that said, "Shou Ya," which basically means I will buy your secondhand drugs, right? It's a Chinese scam, right? With a telephone number on it. So I went on her TV show wearing a T-shirt that says, "I will buy your secondhand drugs" in Chinese with my telephone number on it. And 5 minutes into the interview, she asked me, do you know what that means? I said, yeah. She goes, whose phone number is that? I said, it's my phone number. And the camera went zoom, straight into my T-shirt. 40 million people knew my telephone number, which is how I then ended up with this snowball effect of media. Because all the media that saw that show and liked it started to call me up. Yeah. And then I ended up on the next show and Kuala Da Benying and then Jilai Zhuang and blah, 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 blah. It was this snowball effect. And it was all through these little immature pranks. And also I got her wearing a T-shirt on the show because I sent a T-shirt to her office in a bag with chocolates and flowers and a picture of me and the kids. I said, if you wear this shirt on the show, you'll change my life. And of course she wore it on the show.
Of course.
So it was all these little things that I did very spontaneously that grabbed people's hearts. And one thing I continue to do today is I try to do things differently and try to make the best of every small situation, especially with media. And I love to court the media. I'm an attention seeker. I love to be in front of the camera. And I found out from doing that show, I then became a TV presenter. I had no idea. I drank like 5 beers before I went on that show because I was so scared.
You said you sold the story, but I think it's more you just shared your story.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what sold it, just because.
Yeah, and selling it with passion.
Yeah.
And it's not me glazing over, trying to sell a corporate story.
No. It's
something that's totally from my heart, and it shines through my eyes, and there's total honesty in there. And so people enjoy it. I get nervous. It's still today when I go on television, but that nervous energy kind of draws people in. Because you look a little bit more, there's nothing worse than an overconfident man. A lot of men, when they reach their mid-30s, become overconfident, and they're the most vile beings on earth, I think. I'm insecure, and I screw up all the time, and I'm becoming a little bit more comfortable with that now. Yeah.
Well, tell me a little bit more about how you've seen trust in your years in China.
Okay, entrepreneurs have incredible tools for hiring people, like the A, B, C, D, E, F, G of how to hire people, ask the right questions, and get your A players in the right roles. It's very structured, and it's all about getting out the red flags, looking for problems in people's past so you don't have to hire them. Do not rely on your first instinct when someone walks in the room. That's exactly what I rely on. And I just relied on my heart. I've never used a tool like that in my life. I'm totally an EQ guy. I'm convinced I must have very low IQ. That doesn't bother me, but I'm very good at judging people. In other words, whether I can like them or not, whether I can spend a lot of time with them or not. And everyone in my organization who I've hired, I work with, is based on that. From the guy that makes all the plastered T-shirts, tens of thousands every year, is a guy in his late 50s who's got a little setup in Shunyi outside Beijing, which he employs around 30 old ladies who live in the village. And I've never signed a contract with him in my life. I've never had a problem with him in my life. I met him, I liked him, and he makes all my T-shirts. The women who run my stores are retired old ladies who live in Beijing all their lives, and most of them in the hutongs. I have incredible retention. The ayi who's in my shop today, Kang Ayi, has worked for me for almost 9 years. That's frontline staff. It's unheard of. All the staff in my office, not one of them is a university graduate. They're all young and they're hungry and they're from out of town. And I trust them with my life. I invest a lot of time and money in training them. And I take them traveling and I make sure that they have realistic working hours so that they have their own lives. And I believe they trust me. And I think that when I started to scale my business, I looked at more of these entrepreneur tools for how you can get the right people on board with the right, incredible education, this, that, and everything. And I ended up with people I didn't like. Now I just have people I like. And so I train them very hard. And I think that the amount of time I put into them and trust is that they trust me back. And same with the working partnerships with the factories, and the people that we deal with, including our customers. We produce a high quality product, and we're very honest about how we do business. So I think the trust, through the working with our community in Nanluguxiang, through joining local government, where I work also, and working with the local residents committee, we just gain trust by being decent and honest. Chinese people are incredibly strategic. There's very little trust within the society. And so it can be very hard when you come in with this approach where it's just like, you're very heartfelt and just trust me. They don't want to trust you because the majority of people who've worked in my office, they haven't liked the bosses they've worked for before. And so why should they trust you? They automatically don't trust you. So it takes time. But I like to think that I've earned that trust now with my core team, my frontline staff, and the factories and the people that we deal with.
I think when you talk about trust, a lot of it may be business trust. Do you think there's a lot of personal trust versus business trust? There's not that trust in business. But I think that there is. I think it's just there's massive amounts of trust, but it's all in personal. If the real connection is there, there's all kinds of follow up on their part. There's all kinds of commitment. There's all kinds of empathy, care, energy when I create personal trust. When I've created personal trust, and when I look at the way that you've built trust in your organization, training, all those things, I think what you've done is you've made them trust you as a person.
Well, you know what? I'm all about relationships. I'm a very emotional person, and I want to get to know people. Everyone that I work with and everyone that makes a T-shirt or even screen prints a T-shirt, I like to get to know them. And the older ladies in my organization that run the shops, they're always telling me off for being too trusting of people. And they said I shouldn't be so trusting of people, but that's just who I am. My business is small, and it always will be, so maybe I can get away with it when I'm running a business at such a level. But I think you're right. You can gain a lot of personal trust and show people emotion, and they really like it. But in a society like China, with this many people and so fast moving and business, it's incredibly cutthroat and strategic. It can be tough.
I'd almost say that you only do business with the people that you do have trust with.
I'll only do business with people I like.
Yeah.
Full stop.
Yeah.
If I don't like people, I generally always tell them to off.
Yeah.
Yeah. But that's just who I am.
But I think that's also what a lot of Chinese companies do too. You have 15 international companies coming in. We are the best. We're that, and they're like, I don't like you.
Yeah, I'm not sure about that. A lot of Chinese businesses are very numbers driven, right? I'm not sure how personal they are in their dealings myself, but I keep well away from big business, so it's hard to tell.
What about leadership? Tell me about good, bad leadership in China.
I'm a terrible manager. I'm an all right leader. I'm not that good. But a leader, grabs a heart, and the manager grabs the head, right? And so my job is to grab people's hearts, I always say to my staff, because, I take them on and they don't have an awful lot of education. I always say to them that It's a quote that I heard is that, there's only one worse thing than losing a highly trained member of staff that you put a lot of money into, and that's keeping one that you don't train. Right? So I spend a lot of money, on training the staff, and I take on people who are hungry, 渴望, It's a very important attitude, right? There's nothing worse than a lazy employee. The minute I spot any laziness, I tend to fire people, because I know that I can be lazy, so I can spot it myself. I just want hungry people, and then I just keep feeding them. I feed them with books. I take them to training sessions, and I send them off for training, and just watch them, blossom.
Yeah.
And the one thing that you have as an entrepreneur, the power that you have, which is so powerful and so inspiring, is you can change people's lives, and that's something that inspires me more than anything. I just came back from Thailand. I took my whole team there, my whole core team. 2 of them had never been on an aeroplane, and all of them had never left China. And it was the most exciting experience. I've traveled the world, and Thailand, I've been to many times, but I've never been so excited to travel. Waking up on that aeroplane with the sun coming up, getting ready to land in KL on the way there, I just seeing their eyes. It was so inspiring, and that you're changing their lives at that moment. So as a leader, I just get inspired by seeing them develop, seeing them happy at work, seeing them genuinely happy at work, creating an office environment that they can feel that they can share, eventually empower as well, where you can see them making their own decisions without you there. Those are the kind of things that really inspire me as a leader, seeing designers, take initiative or artists that we have in-house and start to produce their own artwork. Seeing, inventory managers, learning about turnover of inventory and saying, you know what, you never give me a goal on turnover, but I'm going to turn over inventory 4 times this year. And he looks so excited about it, Seeing them all develop in their own roles. It's hard to keep on staff when you're in a small company. Young Chinese want to work in a big company. It's a terrible dream in China. Is they keep you working out in Shangdi until 11 p.m. when your VP goes home. You buy a flat out there, you get on the subway with all the other people, you can't lift your hand to scratch your face, and you work until you're 65 and get ready for retirement, and then you're going to die. You've got to give your family respect and give your family face. It's a life that I opted out of, at age 17 when I dropped out of school. It's very hard to inspire young Chinese to work in a young company, but if you can spend time in investing into them, pay them well, and give them enough time of their own so they can enjoy their own life, then you can eventually get some form of retention. But it took me time, for sure. The team I have now is the best team I've ever had. But I've lost people along the way because I didn't really realize how to inspire them, But now I've got the best team ever, and it comes from learning about these things, investing time in their training. So important, company culture. And spending time with them one-on-one, I walk with my staff, I'm right next to Hohai, the most beautiful lake in Beijing. So I spend, an hour of every week with each member of staff walking around Hohai, and just talking to them, getting to know them, listening to them.
Are you talking about work stuff, or are you talking about...
Doesn't matter.
You're just talking.
I do my meetings walking because I can't sit down.
Right.
I'm too ADHD for sitting down. So I do a lot of my meetings walking anyway. And we're fortunate our offices are in old Beijing, in the old inspiring hutongs,
It's such a cool place to walk through.
Yeah, so why sit in an office when you can walk, right? So we do most of our meetings walking. My accountant will bring an iPad. We'll do all the accounts while walking. Otherwise, I fall asleep. I look at an Excel document. I'm asleep within seconds. Literally, in a one-on-one meeting, I can fall asleep. So it's all walking.
Why do you choose people specifically, or do you make the conscious choice of hiring people without education? What's that strategy?
You know what? If I told you I had an awesome strategy, I'd be lying, I think. I've never made a big reach out when it comes to employing. I haven't put up adverts all over the place. And when I was failing at my business, when I was scaling it, I had headhunters bringing people to me that I hated. But all my current employees have come through, a program we have in-house, which is if you could recommend someone that's awesome and I employ them, I give you money. A lot of companies do that, right? And I've just found out that really nice people tend to know really nice people. And so when I meet someone really nice, I do a lot of due diligence. Traditionally, I'll do 5 or 6 one-hour interviews before I even think about hiring them. I quite often will want to meet their partners too. I'm keen to meet their parents. I'm keen to go out to their apartment. Keen to have a few beers with them even. Spending a lot of time with them on a personal level, getting a feel for who they really are, just through socially spending time with them. I'm not very good at this structure that books teach you like that. I just know in my heart who a good and bad person is, and I learned that from my mum and from my wife. And I never stop interviewing as well. Right now, I don't need anyone in my core team, but it doesn't stop me from interviewing.
You learned how people are good or bad through your mom and your wife. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think, basic values, right? I think that, we all have basic values instilled in us by our parents and our family. And so those are the same values that I instill in my team. Now, a lot of companies will have core values written down and put on a big board in the office and plastered on their computer screens. I don't need to do that. And I don't need to define them. And this is, again, this part of entrepreneurship that kind of pisses me off a bit, is that, meet all the entrepreneurs. What are your company core values? What is your company this, that, and everything, right? Everyone's got these structures for everything. Not everyone needs that, My mum really taught me what was right and wrong, My wife even more so. And my children even more so. And also I learned from them, what was important in life, what I, where I needed to spend my time and what made me happy. And so, you have these natural values. And so I don't feel I need to write them down. I just think that I need to spend a lot of time with my core team, and so they rub off on them. And get them communicating really well. So, that's, it just makes the business far more personal. My business has a heart and a soul. And I can guarantee to anybody, if you want to go to one of my 2 stores in Beijing, that you will feel it.
Right. And I absolutely agree.
You'll absolutely feel it in the women you meet, in the designs you see, in the decorations on the wall, in the smiles on the people's faces that see them. It's totally from the heart. That's all it is. It's straight from the heart. And it always will be. It's the only reason I managed to stay alive for 9 years in this very difficult industry. Is because it's all just coming from the heart. And it's the same with the way I lead my team. It just comes from the heart. So, we're not going to get an IPO. I'm probably never going to get an acquisition because I think people would think it would be too dangerous to invest in to buy a business off me.
Sure.
But I don't care.
Yeah.
I just love what I'm doing. I love the people I work with. I love my life. I love going to work every day. I don't know necessarily what my core values are written down. I don't have all that structure. I just know I'm having a laugh. My team are happy. My sales are very healthy. My sales are growing slowly every year. Creatively, we're growing massively every year. And I'm in a good spot. And surely, when you look at a goal in life, it should be that we want to be happy. And I am incredibly happy. So that's it for me. And it took me 8 years to realize that as an entrepreneur.
Yeah. It makes me really happy to hear these things because it's not about necessarily a bigger technique, but it's all about refocusing on people. And I think people from the West, unless you're an empathetic person, before I was a terribly insensitive person. Mm-hmm. I thought this is the goal. Money is what allows you to live your life. I'll help you make money. You do your thing. I never asked questions. I never spent time. And one of the things we focus on is with, not for. In Chinese society, people are always doing things for each other, but not with. And if you look at the parents, the role of the dad with kids, a lot of times there's so much sacrifice and obligation, but all they want is to spend more time with dad or with mom, right? And I think you've filled that in your business, is giving these people some of the care that they know they feel from their parents, but a little more behavior.
Well, I mean, I'm spending more time with these kids in the office than I am with my own kids, right? I try to balance it. We fine our staff for working overtime. No one's allowed to be in the office after 6.
Great.
And we all start work at 8 minutes past 9, and it's a very strong rule. And it's very important that they have their own lives. And with our communication, you talked about communication is very important, right? And story, I'm big on story. So I always have everyone in the office sharing stories. All the time sharing stories. Stories of failure. Our inventory guy screwed up big time last week. Just share it. And let's talk about it. And we're not here to point you out. We just want to hear how it happened and how we can maybe share other stories and work out how we can make it, we can work out this problem. And getting your staff aligned, right? That's a problem. I just did a travel show. I've got a travel show that's overseas. I got to do a lot of traveling for that. For the last 3 months, I was away a lot. The team did a great job, but I saw that the alignment was gone. They were doing their jobs, but they weren't communicating.
They weren't doing it together.
They weren't doing it together.
Right.
And so I just spent a whole day with everybody talking about exactly what they were doing and making sure that everybody knew what everyone was doing and how to get everyone realigned. Vern Harnish, he's a great, talker and he's got his Rockefeller Habits book. It's a great book, but he always talks about, 1% idea and 99% alignment. And there's some real, Daoli, some truth in that. Is that, quite often Chinese culturally in their roles will become very self-centered. It's just, I need to do my job and I'm not going to get involved in yours because they're thinking about their own responsibility. Getting people aligned can be quite difficult, but with is the right word there. You just got to get everybody working out. And another thing I do is I just will have a revolution, at a totally random point in the year. I'll switch everybody's jobs across.
Really?
So I'll put the accountant girl in inventory guy in accounts. And I just did it last week. I did our fashion, fashion design girl who does all our displays. I put her into inventory and moved the inventory guy who's got no creative edge whatsoever into fashion design for a week. Just because I want to challenge them,
allow them to think differently.
Yeah, and get them to know each other's jobs. And also, actually, if you've got a really solid A player who's awesome, you should be able to switch them across, and they should be able to do pretty much anything.
I sincerely enjoyed getting to know the man behind the screen print. And as I listened to his stories, I grinned from ear to ear. I was sucked in by the things he had to say. And I wanted to know more, not only about his business, but about who he was.
Their father did his own thing, was very heart on sleeve, and was desperately insecure, made tons of mistakes, fell in love a lot of times, and was generally nice to everyone, and created a bunch. And he was happy.
Daddy Dominic, next episode of Made in China. We know we can change the way people do business in China by telling the best learning stories of the people we admire. And we'd love your help to continue to do that. Please nominate your China heroes for an interview, tell us more about what you want, and share the stories you like. Get all these links, show notes, and more information about today's conversation at getmadeinchina.com.
Thanks for listening to Made in China. You can find us on Stitcher, iTunes, and of course our website, Get Made in China.